So for me, the most interesting siege in Greek history didn't occur in Greece at all, but rather in southern Italy, which the Greeks called Magna Graecia. Magna Graecia was what they would call Greater Greece and is home to a lot of colonies such as Tarentum, Heraclea, Sybaris, Croton, Locri, Rhegium, especially Syracuse. These colonies were often fighting each other. They were often at each other's throats. And sometimes they even interfered in the politics of mainland Greece, like Athens and Sparta and Thebes and Corinth. They were very, very central to Greek culture and to Greek achievement. But probably the most noteworthy and the most famous one was Syracuse. Syracuse controlled the island of Sicily. They, in general, tried to control most of southern Italy. Here's a zoom in of Sicily. So Syracuse had an arch enemy, and Syracuse's arch enemy was Carthage. Carthage was a Phoenician civilization. It was a city-state that controlled a large area in the western Mediterranean. And Carthage controlled half of the island of Sicily, which Syracuse did not like. They had a particularly large city called Motya. Motya was in the western part of Sicily, and they controlled roughly half the island. We have purple here for the Carthaginians, appropriately. And this is how you write Motya in Carthaginian or in Punic. Just thought it was interesting. And they control roughly half the island here. So you can see the situation Syracuse and Motya are in. Syracuse didn't like that, and under their king Dionysus, started to rebuild their army, and they came up the coast, taking city after city until they reached Motya. Motya was a large city in a lagoon. It was on an island. It was difficult to lay siege to. It was on the middle of the island, or the middle of the lagoon here, in that island. It was very cramped. It was almost like Manhattan in that it had towers, and people lived in a small space, but they built buildings high, such as 5-story building, which is unusual in the ancient world, towering above the walls. They had a mole, which is a piece of land that extended out like a bridge to the mainland, and that was it. That was the only connection they had to the mainland. When they found out that the people of Syracuse, the Greeks, were coming, they cut the mole and destroyed it. So the Greek fleet came from Syracuse. They landed their soldiers. They beached their transports, and they prepared to lay siege to Motya, and wanted to start rebuilding the mole, that bridge, so they could reach the island and lay siege to it. Now, the Carthaginians found out about this, and they weren't about to give up Motya, one of their greatest cities in Sicily, so they sent their own fleet. And the Carthaginian fleet appeared at the head of the lagoon, about 100 ships, and they kept the Greeks trapped inside the lagoon. They burned the Greek transports, even though the Greek warships were beached to the north, and the Greeks were kind of trapped here. So what the Greeks did was that they brought catapults down to the peninsula, and they started to shoot catapults at the Carthaginians, who are here in the black ships with the eye, and they tried to defend their beached transports in the north, or their beached warships in the north, but it wasn't going well. And so here you can see the situation that the Greeks are in. If they lose their fleet, they won't be able to resupply their soldiers on the land. They also won't be able to rebuild that land bridge, that mole, to Motya. So they have a really big problem. And if you want to pause the video and see if you could figure out what you would do as Greeks, you can, if you were in this situation, and kind of test your generalship. But what they actually did was drag those beached warships over that piece of land, and back onto the other side, and they came around the hook and trapped the Carthaginians inside the lagoon. They destroyed many of the Carthaginian ships, and the Carthaginians were forced to escape with at least some of their ships. So it was a major defeat for the Carthaginian navy. Syracuse was able to lay siege to Motya. They were able to rebuild the mole. Motya didn't have any ships. They weren't able to stop it at all. So eventually that bridge was rebuilt, that land bridge, and they were able to bring siege towers in, these giant towers that reached up to the wall, and eventually Motya was captured. The king of Syracuse, Dionysius, was very vengeful against any Greek who had fought against him, and he ruthlessly killed anyone that was Greek and fought with the Carthaginians. So that's it. That's what I think is one of the most interesting, or the most interesting siege in Greek history, and I hope you enjoyed seeing that, and I hope it was interesting for you, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.